Shalom, my name is Yair Davidiy. I'm speaking to you from Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. I'm speaking to you on behalf of Brit-Am, Hebrew nations. Our movement researches the whereabouts of the lost 10 tribes, and we have found them. We have found the lost 10 tribes, the lost 10 tribes of Israel amongst Western nations, amongst the peoples of North America, that is the USA, Canada, also other nations such as Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and amongst the Isles of Britain, the British Isles, that is Ireland, Ulster, Scotland, Wales, England, and also amongst the areas of Scandinavia, Holland, France, and the West European region. And that is where the lost 10 tribes are. We're not saying that everyone in those regions belongs to the lost 10 tribes. We're saying that is where the lost 10 tribes are. That is where they are to be found. And historically they did play a significant role in the formation and the ethnical character of the peoples in question. And we have explained this in other talks, and we will explain it again. At the moment we're discussing the whereabouts of the lost 10 tribes that are based on historical factors and also on ancient legends and traditions. And we have proofs. We have proofs of this from the Bible and from secular evidence. We have very strong proofs. But in addition to this very strong evidence we also have indications, proofs that are not absolutely ironclad, but they do indicate, they do add to the overall scenario. And that is what our present talk is about to discuss. We're about to discuss legends concerning Hesperides. Hesperides were maidens in Greek mythology, were to be found in the West. But when we look at different traditions concerning these girls, these young maidens, we find indications that confirm our identification or our understanding that the lost 10 tribes moved from the east to the west. And this is of interest, and that is what our present talk is about. Our present talk is about this subject concerning the Hesperides. We have a source, Dionysius of Alexandria, in Egypt, about 190 to 264 CE. There's the common era. He was a Christian convert to Christianity from paganism. He had been a paganism, and he was relying upon a classical tradition that was extant in his own times. And he writes concerning the Hesperides in the Western Ocean, whose wealthy hills with mines of tin abound, and stout Iberians till the fertile ground. So he refers to the British Isles as Hesperides. He mentions the tins of the hills of tin that was then available in Britain. Britain was known for its tin resources. Pliny says, the Roman historian Pliny says that Britain supplied the ancient world with most of its tin. Tin was very important in those times. Tin, together with copper, formed the alloy known as bronze, and they had the Bronze Age. And bronze was the most important metal in use at that time. It was more important than iron. Even after we had the Bronze Age and then the Iron Age, even in the Iron Age, bronze was usually more important. And so the supply of tin to make bronze was of strategic value and importance. And he mentions this, and most of the ancient world received its tin from Cornwall, from the region in southwest Britain, England. And Dionysius of Alexandria mentions this, and he refers to the inhabitants of Britain as Iberians. Iberia is derived from the word Iberi or Iveri, meaning Hebrew in the Hebrew language. That is what the Hebrews call themselves in the Bible, and that is also what the so-called Celtic peoples in the West, in the British Isles, and in Gaul and in related areas also call themselves. They refer to themselves as Iberi. Even now we have the related word Hibernian, Hiberni, to refer to someone from Ireland, but not only Ireland but also in Britain, also in what is now France and the areas around in that region. The peoples who we identify in conventional history as Celtic, they did not call themselves Celts, they called themselves Iberi, meaning Hebrews. We have another separate talk on this, and also several articles. At all events, this is what these people, the Iberia, the ancient Hebrews in the west, who were from the 10 tribes of Israel, they are identified as being dwelling in Hesperides. Hesperides, according to this source, was another name for Britain, for the Isles of Britain. Other understandings identify the Hesperides with Spain. But Spain and Britain were connected. They were connected by trade and by ethnic associations and so on. So there's no real contradiction from our point of view, or from the point of view of the ancient world at that time. The Hesperides in Greek mythology referred to a legendary garden, the extremity of the world, at the end of the world, which could be Spain, or could be Britain, it could be the British Isles, whatever they considered the extremity of the world to be. The Greeks didn't know that much at the beginning. Or it could also be referred to the nymphs, the fairy type girls who in classical mythology were in this region, and they guarded golden apples with the aid of a dragon, and they are identified with the Hesperides, and they came to symbolize or personify the Hesperides in mythology. And that is according to Greek tradition, but the Greek tradition, a lot of Greek mythology is not actually Greek. It derives from areas to the east of Greece, from Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia was the region of ancient Sumer, of Ur, of Akkad, of Babylon, Assyria, numerous other areas of importance. It was the center of civilization at the beginning of time, as where from mankind had its birth. From there, civilization spread outwards. And a lot of what is now, what we understand from Greek mythology, what we take to be Greek mythology, is actually traditions, legends from Mesopotamia, from that region, which is now known as Iraq and Syria, taken from that region and taken by the Greeks and given a Greek addressing, Hellenized, as if to say. So this was the Hesperides. And the Hesperides were received their name possibly from Sardis. Sardis was a city, was the capital of Lydia. Lydia was a kingdom in the west coast, or close to the west coast of what's now Turkey. Anatolia, mainland Turkey. At that time it was more, at least in Asian studies. In studies of Asian history, the region is known as Anatolia rather than Turkey. And Lydia was an important kingdom. Lydia derives from Lud. Lud was the descendant of Shem. And they had a kingdom in the west of this region. The capital of this kingdom was Sardis. Sardis is sometimes referred to as Separad. And they say that the name Hesperides is derived from Sepharad. The P and the F sounds are interchangeable. So this explains it, or helps us understand how these words interchanged at that time. So that is one of the explanations. Sardis was in the west. Sardis was also known as Sepharad, and then so the name Sepharad or Hesperides became transposed to regions in the west. That too is how in a Jewish tradition, or a tradition that the Jews later adopted, the region of Spain was known as Sepharad. A Jew from one of the eastern Jewish communities is known as a Sephardi, or often referred to as Sephardi. Jews from the east or from Asia, Africa and so on, often referred to as Sephardi. Why? Sephardi actually means Spain. Or Sephard means Spain in Jewish terminology, in rabbinical terminology. And the Jews in Spain were very important at one stage. They were culturally developed, and afterwards they were expelled from Spain. When they were expelled from Spain, they went wherever could be accepted, and they became very prominent amongst the Jews of North Africa and the Jews of the East. And these communities adopted the customs and the traditions and the ways of defining things that the Jews from Spain had brought with them, so they all have come to be called Sephardim. And Lydia was adjoined another land known as Phrygia. The Phrygians originally came from Thrace, that is in southeast Europe, and they moved to this region. And the Roman historian Pliny tells us about Midocretus, the king who was the first who brought tin from the island called Cassiteris. Midocretus, according to our understanding, or the conventional understanding, Midocretus is another name for Midas. Midas was a legendary king of Phrygia. He was known for his riches, as rich as Midas was an expression. He was very rich in Greek legend, Midas, and he is said, according to, have brought this tin from the island called Cassiteris. Cassiteris means the island of tin, or the land of tin. And it was another name for Britain, which, as we said, was considered the source of tin, according to Pliny in another source, and also archaeology confirms this. And Midas is also mentioned. It is known under the name Mita in the Assyrian inscriptions, and he is mentioned in inscriptions ranging from the 717 BC to 709 BCE. After which he was killed by the Cimmerians. The Cimmerians are identified with Gomer, people known as Cimmerian Assyrian inscriptions, and they killed Midas, the king of Phrygia, and they overtook, or they killed him, they attacked him, they caused him to commit suicide, and they overran his land. And in Phrygia we have an area known as Ascania. Ascania is identified with Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz was a son of Gomer, and Ascania or Ashkenaz is later associated with Germany. So too, that is how we come to find the Jews from Europe are called Ashkenazim, because similarly to the Sephardim in Spain, the Jews in Germany were culturally developed. They were known as Ashkenazim because they lived in Germany. And then in the time of the Crusaders, and later they suffered from persecutions and they were forced to move, and they moved to the east and moved to Eastern Europe, and in Eastern Europe they brought their language Yiddish, the German type of Hebrew-German dialect, which they brought with them, and their customs and traditions and so on were accepted by the Jewish people amongst whom they settled. So that today, all Jews from European areas, or Jews that abide by traditions that originated in Europe, are referred to as Ashkenazim. Even though literally Ashkenaz actually is another name for Germany. And Ashkenaz, as we said, was a son of Gomer, the son of Japhet. And we have an indication that the 10 tribes settled amongst people associated with Gomer. Gomer gave birth to 3 sons, Ashkenaz, Riphat, and Togarmah, and these are names of people who were in different regions in the Middle East area. The lost 10 tribes were exiled to regions associated with the sons of Gomer. And not only that, we have the book of Hosea, chapter 1. The book of Hosea, chapter 1, refers to the 10 tribes as being the offspring of Gomer, a loose woman, and it is described how they will worship foreign idols, and that they will go in other ways not acceptable to God Almighty, and then God Almighty will disown them for the time of their exile, until in the end times He will re-accept them. And so here we have a hint of the lost 10 tribes being identified with Gomer. Gomer meaning the Sumerians and their offshoots, the Scythians and other peoples, and this too is consistent with our findings. That the lost 10 tribes were to intermix or be connected with people of so-called Celtic and Germanic culture, and to move to the west and to settle there amongst them or alongside them, until in the end times they will once again separate themselves out and return to the God of Israel. So this is that was their connection with Phrygia and Midas. We see that Midas, according to tradition, had begun the association with Britain, because later on we find the Cimmerians in Britain, and perhaps their conquest of Phrygia and the preparation made by Midas in that direction was a factor in their moving there, or in a portion of them moving there to the very early stage. Getting back to the Hesperides, these maidens who came to personify the lands or the areas themselves, they were depicted as maidens, young women, guarding a tree which bore golden apples, with the assistance of a dragon, a magic dragon called Leto. They're usually given as 3 of these maidens, and usually numbered. They're known as Aigul, Erythrea, and Hesperi. And these names are significant. We have the name Aigul for one of the Hesperides. Aigul is said to have meant in the Greek terminology bright, something bright, brilliant, shining. But in Hebrew, this very same name Aigul also means a bull calf. Like a bull, a young bull, is known as an Aigul. It was a nickname for Ephraim. Ephraim was the son of Joseph. He was one of the foremost tribe amongst the lost 10 tribes. See Rashi on Jeremiah 31 verse 18, where it says, I have surely heard Ephraim bemoaning himself. You have chastened me, and I was chastised like an untrained bull calf. In Hebrew, an Aigul. This very word Aigul, a bull calf. You store me, and I will return. You are the Lord my God. So Aigul was a name applied to Ephraim. And later on, we find in Europe, we have Europe was overrun by so-called barbarian nations. Some of these nations invaded England. They're known as Angles and Saxons and the Jutes. And the Angles and the Saxons were preeminent in these invasions. The Angles gave their name to England. England is Angle land. The name England is derived from the Angles. The Angles on the continent were also known as Aigul. There's another way of pronouncing Angle was Aigul. Or Aigul had another meaning, but it was used as a term that could be, it was synonymous with Aigul. Aigul and Angle were synonymous terms. And not only that, but amongst the Saxons who settled in England, the name Aigul was quite common, was well known. And also the Saxons who settled in England apparently identified as Angles, because they allowed the name Angle land to be given to the whole of the country, from which we have the name England. And you could say that in Hebrew, taking this equation to its logical conclusion, England is actually named the land of the bull calf, and the bull calf is Ephraim. So you may ask, what is the connection, or how may the connection be explained? Because we have one of the Hesperides who also dwelt in the land of British Isles, also was known as Aigul, long before the Angles came there and gave their name to the country. And the Angles also being known as Aigul. In other words, the very same term, the very same name. So this is a historical curiosity, but it happens more often than not. We have names, or the same type of names, or name associations, belonging to different peoples, but being applied to the very same area, as if the certain regions are predestined to receive people bearing these names. For instance, there are numerous explanations I can give. One that comes just off the top of my head. I remember that there was people known as Dan or Dana amongst the ancient so-called Celtic peoples who settled in England. You also see it on the maps of Ptolemy of the ancient Britain in the Roman times and before the Roman times. So on the east, in the northeast, you have a region known as Danum, city also known as Danum after Dan. And later on, the Vikings from Denmark settled in that same area, as if they had been predestined to come to that region. At all events, this is what we have. We also should remember the blessing of Moses to Joseph, Deuteronomy 33:17. According to conventional translations into English, this blessing goes, his glory is like a firstborn bull. This is referring to Joseph. Deuteronomy 33:17, his glory is like a firstborn bull, and his horns are like the horns of the wild ox, actually in Hebrew the ram, unicorn. Together with them you shall push the peoples to the ends of the earth. They are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. And we have taken the original Hebrew and analysed it and reinterpreted it, retranslated it in light of the Hebrew meaning and the rabbinical and other commentators, or our own understanding of this verse according to the Hebrew original. And it may also be rendered as this, that he, that is Joseph, will receive his glory from the firstling of his bull, that is Ephraim, and his, that is Manasseh, the horns of Manasseh are immensely powerful as of a unicorn. Together they will butt the nations. They, Ephraim and Manasseh, will be together until the ends, that is the extreme points of the geographical entity, of the geographical masses of the continental extremities, which is where we do find them. They will be together until the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, that are multiplied 1,000 times more, together with those of Manasseh. And this blessing has been fulfilled in the British peoples and the offshoots of the British peoples in North America, and today they are an immense number of people, and their glory and their influence is to be felt in every nation of the earth, as it was prophesied would happen. And so we have this equation equal with the angles, and having been pre-foreseen or predestined or preordained, as if to say historically, by the eagle from the Hesperides, already have been mentioned as identifiable with that area. And so too we find another association that we already mentioned is the association of Ashkenaz, the son of Gomer. Gomer had 3 sons, Ashkenaz, Riphat and Togarmah, and Ashkenaz was identified with Ascania in Phrygia. And Ascania is the name later we find it in Germany, which may explain how Germany came to be identified with Ashkenaz in rabbinical tradition. And Ascania is identified as Ashkenaz. Another identification of Ashkenaz is with the Scythians. The Scythians in Assyrian inscriptions are sometimes referred to as Ashkuzi or Ishkuza, and this name is similar to how the Hebrew name Ashkenaz would have been pronounced, and there are those who identify the Scythians with Ashkenaz in the same way as the Cimmerians, also known as Gemiri in Assyrian inscriptions, are identified with Gomer. And this is what we have historically. Also, the epigraphical evidence, the evidence of inscriptions, shows us that the Cimmerians or the Gemirians from Gomer were originally associated with Assyria. They were servants of Assyria or mercenaries in Assyrian service, and they rebelled. And later on the Scythians, or shortly afterwards, the Scythians came out of them, emerged from them. This is consistent with the Ashkenaz having been a son of Gomer, emerging from the same people, from the people of Gomer, from the Cimmerians. And so we have the Cimmerians overrunning Phrygia, and together with the Cimmerians was Ashkenaz, and Ashkenaz is identified, or the Scythians are identified as a one grouping, and coming to an area that had also been associated with Ashkenaz, that is Ascania. And we also find Ashkenaz mentioned in Jeremiah 51. Verse 27 to 28, it says, "Raise a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, prepare the nations for war against them," meaning Babylon, "summon against the kingdoms, Aram, Mini, and Ashkenaz." Appoint a marshal against her, bring up horses like bristling locusts, prepare the nations for war against her, the kings of the Medes, with their governors and deputies, and every land under their dominion. Now Jeremiah was predicting a war against Babylon. But the description of Jeremiah depicts what we know historically from what happened, but there are exceptions. There are things where he goes beyond what actually happened, according to our historical understanding of the time. And it seems that, as we find in other cases, Jeremiah was using this historical event as a prototype of what would happen in the end times. And here too we have Ashkenaz being mentioned. And Ashkenaz is identified both with the Phrygians and with the Scythians. And the 10 tribes were to unite, were to join up with the sons of Gomer, including Ashkenaz, and to move together with them to the west. And we will continue this subject because it shows associations between Israelite tribes and entities that were in the Middle East that moved westward, and it confirms our understanding that we see from other sources that the lost in tribes moved westward together with them. Thank you. May the Lord God of Israel bless you.